What's up, everybody? Welcome into Breaking the Huddle. I'm Joel Klatt, and this show, as always, is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. It is the one fans deserve. Packed show tonight because we've got to react to these college football playoff rankings. The first edition of the college football playoff rankings have come out. We've got our top 6, our top 25, and I've got full thoughts on that. I'm also going to break down a couple of these great games this week. I don't normally do that on Breaking the Huddle, but these games are so big and so important. I'm going to talk about and preview some of these games that we've got on Saturday. We also have Brett Bielema, head coach of the Illinois team that's played so well this year and in that top 25, making a run at that Big Ten West Division. He's on the program before we get to Clatt back. But we don't have a lot of time. Okay, so let's get to the college football playoff rankings. This is what they gave us on Tuesday night. This is the top 6. They gave us Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson in the 4, and then Michigan at 5 and Alabama at 6. Okay, I have got 5 distinct points that I want to make about this top 25 that we saw on Tuesday. The first thing is about a team that is not in this top 6 but absolutely should be, and that's TCU. TCU got absolutely hosed by brand bias. There's no other explanation. This committee looked at TCU, and I feel like they looked at the logo on the side of the helmet and the front of the jersey more than they did the resume. Because the fact is that if TCU's resume were given to Texas or Oklahoma, if everything was equal and Texas or Oklahoma had 2 wins that were better than any win that Clemson had, if they had a top 5 scoring offense and top 5 total offense, if they had a better strength of record and strength of schedule than Clemson, if they had the better quarterback than Clemson in terms of the situation Max Duggan has put TCU in, then there is no doubt in my mind, nor any of our minds, that Texas or Oklahoma would have been in the top 4. So this is pure and simple brand bias, and it is laid bare for everybody to see. And committee, you better fix it because all of us know it. The brand bias is hurting TCU. That's number 1. Number 2, the SEC coalition is strong, really strong. And rightly so. They've got a lot of great teams this year, and I'm not going to say that they're not. Having said that, 5 teams in the top 11 I thought was a bit of an overreach. I thought 5 teams in the top 15 probably was more accurate, but there's LSU overranked to a great degree, by the way. The biggest outlier as it relates to the AP poll and what they rose into the CFP, they're at number 10. And guess what LSU does for the SEC, and more specifically Tennessee? It presents a really good backstop for Tennessee because Tennessee's got that great win in Baton Rouge against LSU. So now, with LSU at 10, you've got this coalition where even if they were to lose to Alabama this week, they're not dropping past 20, right? And so now Tennessee, even if they lose to Georgia, they're not falling below TCU. But that's only there if you've got the backstop of LSU. If LSU would have been more properly ranked at 14, 15, 16, and let's say they lose to Alabama, they would have fallen into the low 20s, maybe even out of the rankings, depend on the style of the game. But no. That's not allowed because we've got to backstop Tennessee because, heaven forbid that they were to fall below TCU if they would have lost. So the coalition, the firewall, the SEC firewall, it is strong, it is built, and it is real. All right, next point, number 3. The conference that has enjoyed the least amount of success in the CFP era is the Pac-12, and we all know that. But when I looked at these rankings, I saw a clear path for the Pac-12 to get to the CFP. Now, they're not in the top 6, but remember, they don't have an undefeated team. But when you sit there and you look at Oregon, ranked where they're at 8, when you look at USC at 9, UCLA right outside of the top 10, you can see a path. And specifically for USC, because they don't have the direct comparison like Oregon does to an SEC team because of Oregon's loss to Georgia, you see a path or a scenario where if they get just a little bit of help, you could see a Pac-12 team, more specifically USC, potentially in that playoff. I think UCLA could also be in that boat. They just need a little help. What's the help that they need? Well, it would help if Clemson were to lose, let's say this week to Notre Dame. It would help if TCU were to lose, and it would really help if Alabama were to lose. At that point, what you have is the Pac-12 probably getting in to that fourth spot in the CFP. So there's a path. And for people that root for the Pac-12, that's really all you've been hoping for over the course of the last few years. So that's number 3. Number 4, Clemson's overrated. Clemson being in the top 4 right there is a nod, not to this Clemson team, but it's a nod to what past Clemson teams have done. Okay, so this is a ranking that is born out of the ghosts of Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson and Hunter Renfrow, because this edition does not have the resume to back up this ranking. They are not better than Michigan based on the eye test. They are not better than TCU based on the resume. Neither of those can be true, and this playoff committee probably knows it. This is a nod to the ghosts of Christmas past for the Clemson Tigers. And you know what? Good for them, because their program is outstanding. But none of these other teams had to pull their quarterback and rely on their run game to the tune of 60 carries to beat Syracuse at home. And that's absolutely the fact with Clemson. So what does that tell me? Michigan should have been in the top 4. When you look at what Michigan has done this year, yes, they've had a poor non-conference slate, but they handled Penn State to a greater degree than Ohio State did. They've been thoroughly dominant. Only 5% of their snaps have come with when they did not have the lead. And because of that, I think Michigan is a team that should have been 4. They were underrated and Clemson overrated in these first playoff rankings. And that leads me to my last thought, and maybe most important thought. I think that these rankings are a bit like Kaiser Soze, if you will. Right? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled is making people think he didn't exist. And what do you hear on social media constantly about the CFP rankings that aren't the final rankings? These don't matter. That is 100% false. These rankings absolutely matter for 2 very specific reasons. Number 1, this is the recipe of how you make the playoff. Okay? This is the resume builder. The only path to the playoff is through competing against teams in the CFP top 25. So when you get these rankings, they will tell you exactly how to view games and exactly how to view wins and losses. This is the recipe, all right? When it calls for sugar in my chocolate chip cookies, I don't say, hey, it doesn't matter. It matters a great deal. And the second part is perception. Okay, folks, perception in college football still matters a great deal. Not only is it how we crown a champion, but it's also how we recruit. Remember, this is not a sport with a draft and a draft order. We recruit players, and those players choose their programs. So the perception of those programs matter a great deal. When there seems to be a glass ceiling over a program like TCU or Utah, and those letters show up in a recruit's house, it matters what the perception is. If the burden of proof is on those programs and everybody knows it, then the perception matters. And that's why these rankings matter, and every set of rankings matter. So those are my 5 thoughts on the initial CFP playoff rankings. Coming up, we've got to get into these game previews, okay? So we've got some monster matchups. I give you my thoughts coming up next on Breaking the Huddle. All right, welcome back to Breaking the Huddle. Let's get into some of these game previews because we have some monster games this Saturday in college football. Let's start with the biggie. Tennessee, number 1 in the CFP, going to Athens and facing the Georgia Bulldogs. It comes down to 3 things that I want to talk about in this game. It's location, it is defensive pressure, and it is quarterback matchups. That's where I think that the game is won and lost, is because of that. The first is location. And I think that when you look at college football, in particular the teams that are in the top 15, top 10, it's incredibly rare for a team that is that good to get beat at home. Okay, Tennessee beat LSU on the road. That's really the best road win that anybody has in college football thus far. And what you see is really good teams that go into tough environments and get beat. It's littered with that. Oregon gets beat basically at Georgia. Alabama gets beat at Tennessee. USC gets beat at Utah. UCLA gets beat at Oregon. Ole Miss at LSU. Utah at Florida. And then at UCLA. So the environment and location is going to be very difficult for Tennessee to overcome. Now, having said that, the next two categories are places where they actually have a big advantage. The next is defensive pressure. And the problem is that Georgia does not present pressure on the quarterback. And to beat Hendon Hooker and these Tennessee Volunteers with the best offense in college football, you better get to the quarterback. And Georgia doesn't. They've only got 10 sacks on the year. That's 120th in the sport. And they're losing their best pass rusher in Nolan Smith. He's done for the season with that pec injury. He had 3 sacks on the year. And because of the space that Tennessee creates and just the quality of play in that passing game, Georgia better find a way to present some pressure on Hendon Hooker. And then the last thing is the quarterback matchup. Now, listen, I think that we would all give the edge to Hendon Hooker in the quarterback matchup. That being said, Stetson Bennett is still a really good player, and they've got a good passing game. With Georgia, they're averaging over 290 yards throwing the ball. The thing that I get nervous about is that as good as Georgia's defense is, they do give up some yardage in terms of the passing game. You look at last year, they gave up 332 to Tennessee, 421 to Bama in their first matchup in the SEC championship game, and then 369 in the national championship game. So Tennessee's going to be able to throw for some yards here. Tennessee, by the way, is getting 8 points in this one via Fox Bet. I would take Tennessee in those 8 all day long. I think Georgia probably wins the game late, but Tennessee certainly covers. Okay, next game up would be another big one in the SEC, and that's Bama going on the road to LSU. And it's similar to me. The location of this game really matters, and in particular for Alabama. This is not an Alabama team that is dominant on the road, and they haven't been really for 2 years. When you look at this Bama team, what you see is a defense that is really good, and particularly rushing the quarterback. Their statistics as far as total defense and scoring defense off the charts, right? They're really good. But when they're on the road, it's different. Bama's D on the road gives up 32 points per game. At home, they give up 7 points per game. All right, so something's got to give. Because here they go on the road again to a very tough environment. We've seen them struggle on the road now for a couple of years. I mentioned it earlier, but think about this year. They lost to Tennessee on the road. They only won by a point at Texas in a game they probably should have lost. They went last year to 4 overtimes against Auburn. They lost to A&M. They only had a 2-point win against Florida. This team struggles when they leave Tuscaloosa, and it's not a neutral site. So that's a big deal. Jaden Daniels is playing much better. The trump card for Alabama is the fact that they've got the best player in this game, and his name is Bryce Young. They've got to run the football well. They haven't been doing it great in the last couple of games. In fact, in the last 2 games, they're only averaging 2.5 yards per carry. That must get better to help them control the game, control the terms of the game, and control the crowd. I do think Bama wins, but they're favored by 13, and I think that LSU covers that 13. Now my game, Big Noon Saturday. We are headed to Fort Worth, and I cannot wait. We're going to go see Max Duggan, Sonny Dykes, and everybody down there in Frog Nation. TCU's favored by 9.5, and this is a team that is going to have a major chip on their shoulder. The way that the playoff committee ranked them was clear brand bias. They're going to want to prove a point, and they're going to try to do it Saturday against Texas Tech. Their fans are going to have a huge chip on their shoulder. This is a student section, by the way, that is becoming one of the best in all of college football. In fact, they've set a student attendance record at every single one of their home games, and it will be again true in their next one. Explosive offense, top 5 scoring, top 5 total offense, and the only team in the country that's throwing for 300, running for 200, and has 20 touchdowns, both passing and rushing. TCU 6-1 against the spread, facing a Tech defense that is 89th in scoring in the country. Can't wait to get down there to Fort Worth and party it up a little bit in what I think will be a tremendous atmosphere. By the way, Big Noon Kickoff will be there, 10 a.m. Eastern, and then Big Noon Saturday. Gus, Jenny, and I will have the call as TCU takes on Texas Tech. All right, when we come back here on Breaking the Huddle, it's Brett Bielema, the head coach of Illinois. He's going to join us. What a magical season they've been on. It looks like this is a team that's likely to wind up in Indianapolis and be facing the East winner for the Big Ten title. We will talk with Brett Bielema when we come back. All right, let's head out and join a guy that has done a fabulous job with Illinois. The new head coach, well, I shouldn't say new, the head coach at Illinois, Brett Bielema, joins the program now. Coach, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, Joel. Just walked off the press field. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, you guys are doing some work. 7-1, you've won 6 in a row. Just take me, just broad, I don't think a lot of people have been paying attention. So give me a thumbnail of like, what's special about this group?
Joel, last year we finished with 5 wins, but at the end of the year, I remember saying specifically, we had wins against a ranked Penn State on the road, ranked Minnesota on the road, handled Northwestern at the end of the year. And I said at the time, right, I might be the only 5-7 coach say this. I don't know if a lot of people would want to play us right now. Lost some guys, moved on, but I thought we replenished very, very well. This team plays with an edge. We're good on defense. Offensively, we're very opportunistic. Special teams have been a solid team for us. So, excited where this group is, but more excited about where they're going to go.
I feel like, I can't let you gloss over. You're like, we're good on defense. No. You're the number 1 defense in all of college football, total and scoring. You guys have been fantastic on that side of the ball. Why?
I think 3 things. Up front, we play with good extension, allow us to play gap and a half mentality. We really do a good job of setting the edges. On early down pass rush, I think we're getting into quarterback, both physically and mentally, by creating a little post-snap confusion. And the third thing, big thing, our DBs have been ball hawks. They play the ball extremely well, whether they're making an interception or batting it down or defending it. I think those 3 things jump out big time.
Yeah, and I would also add in there, not many teams can cover man-to-man like you guys cover. You guys do an excellent job of that in the back end, and you make the quarterback throw tight window throws, which in college football, a lot of guys can't do that, and so good on you for being able to do that. Now you've set yourself up for this back end of the season, and here you are. You're in the thick of it. You've got a 1-game lead in the Big Ten West. You've got Michigan State this week, and I know you don't want your team to know this, but man, they are in the midst of some serious turmoil. All the suspensions coming down from what happened in the tunnel at Michigan. How do you keep your guys focused on just going out there and focusing on themselves?
Joel, as you know, when you play at this level, the better you become, the more it becomes a little bit more easy to lose sight, right, and lose focus. But our guys have been great. It's about the journey. Our journey this week takes us to opportunity number 9. It's our unusual thing. We're playing a Big Ten opponent that we haven't played before from the other side of the ball or the other side of the division. Allows our guys to focus on the important things, which is Michigan State, who's going to be here on Saturday, the 11 that'll be on the field at one time. And let everything else kind of take care of itself.
Well, I will tell you, for those of us that don't have to play on the field and between the lines Saturday, we're looking forward to that game against Purdue. Looks like that game is going to be where the West is won in the Big Ten. You've got a big matchup against Michigan as well down the stretch. Coach, I'm looking forward to seeing you and covering you because I think that's coming up. So it's been a pleasure from afar just watching this team grow and build. So thank you very much for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Joe. I just to say this, man. I know you're a former player who gets it. Have tremendous respect for what you do professionally and how you do your job. It makes it great for college football. Appreciate you.
I appreciate that. All right, there he goes. Brett Bielema, head coach of Illinois. All right, coming up, we've got Klatt back to finish things off here on Breaking the Huddle. All right, welcome back to Breaking the Huddle. I'm Joel Klatt. Let's get out to a little Klatt back here. Let's take a look at what's going on out in the Twitter space. Let's start with Ryan. Ryan says, Joel, name a year where the best team didn't win the national championship in the CFP era, and why are we up in arms week 1 knowing this is all going to work itself out, and the next month TCU football wins out, they're in, Michigan takes care of Ohio State, they're in. Well, Ryan, see, I actually disagree with you. The way that the rankings did come out week 1, they do matter, as I've explained earlier in the show, and with that backstop of LSU for Tennessee, I don't think that TCU can say or argue that they're win and end. I think that's an arguable position, which is why this is a scenario and an exercise in which I disagree with. I think you're right about Michigan, but the bottom line is this, is that while great teams have won the championship, it matters a great deal who's involved in the 4-team playoff. That's the only way we can define ourselves as a program as successful. So you take that away from teams when you clearly put a glass ceiling above them, or you lay the burden of proof on the little guy and not the big guy. That's a problem, right? That's the inherent problem with this playoff and its structure. So I'm not just going to sit quietly by and let it, quote, play itself out. Next up. Tulane Addict says, Joel Klatt, bad take. Clemson is a top 4 team no matter how much you hate them. Well, listen, talk about a bad take. Tulane Addict. Why are you arguing for Clemson when you right now are the best or highest ranked group of 5 team? If anything, this tweet should be pounding from the high heavens and screaming from the top of a mountain for the expanded 12-team playoff. Because guess what? Tulane would be in a playoff position if there were an expanded 12-team playoff as the 6th best conference champion in the country. So why are you arguing for any 4-team model or any team within the 4-team model? You talk about a bad take. If you're really a Tulane addict, then you should be screaming for a 12-team expanded playoff every chance you get. All right, next up. I'm going to go with Quack Quack. He says expanded playoff, the transfer portal, and players making money off NIL ruined this sport. I could not disagree more, Quack Quack. Let me fix it for you. Let me fix this, okay? You can say this about the current state of college football. A 4-team subjective invitational, and then the transfer portal coupled with no guardrails around NIL, which is now including tampering and inducements. That's what's making the sport rough, and we can fix all of it. We can expand the playoff. We can put up guardrails and enforce those guardrails around transfer portal and NIL, and I would argue that the sport will be, in the future, even better than it was in the past. So Quack Quack, I'm sorry, I disagree with you thoroughly. That's going to do it for Breaking the Huddle today. This show, as always, is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper, remember, it is the one fans deserve. I've been drinking one all day, and it's delicious. I will tell you this, Big Noon Saturday, Fort Worth, Texas, TCU taking on Texas Tech. Gus, Jenny, and I will be there, and I can't wait. Thanks for watching, everybody.